urgent, Switzerland has turned everything upside down. Trump's team has heard Kyiv. Zelenskyy has achieved his goal. Washington has rolled out a new document. The first details have been leaked. Putin is furious. At this very moment, drones are undermining Russia's power. Lukoil is on its knees. Moscow is without light and heat. The punishment is starting to take effect. A strike drone from the Special Operations Forces destroyed a Russian helicopter. Putin's aviation has literally fallen apart. And all of this happened just now. Hello, I'm Darina Hatsakalo, and we're getting started. Everything changed urgently after Switzerland. The parties have prepared an updated framework document. In particular, the disputed points, such as the size of the armed forces, the issue of the armed forces, and the exchange of prisoners, will be adjusted. Washington has provided Kyiv with another act, the so-called Security Guarantees Agreement. Ukrainian media have published 3 key points.
The first of them stipulates that in the event of a renewed armed attack by the Russian Federation on Ukraine, the President of the United States may use the armed forces, intelligence and logistical support, economic and diplomatic actions, and other measures deemed appropriate. The second point states that NATO members, together with France, the United Kingdom, Germany, Poland, and Finland, commit to act in coordination with the United States. And the third point notes that such a framework agreement will be in effect for 10 years, with the possibility of extension.
Tensions are rising. As early as this week, President Zelenskyy may visit the United States to discuss the details of a peace agreement with the head of the White House.
The main idea is that they will discuss the most sensitive issues of the peace plan, such as territorial matters, one of the sources reported.
Nevertheless, there is still no official date for the visit. Negotiations are ongoing, and the final decision will be made by Trump and Zelenskyy. Moreover, it seems that the head of the White House is indeed inclined to listen to the proposals from the Ukrainian side. According to The Economist, the deadline of November 27th for Ukraine to support the peace plan may be extended by another week. Urgently, unidentified drones have attacked Kstovo in the Nizhny Novgorod region of the Russian Federation. The city is home to the Lukoil Nizhny Novgorod refinery and the Sibur-Kstovo petrochemical plant, so the drones were flying directly at their intended targets. The Nizhny Novgorod airport was closed for safety reasons, but it is now open. At the same time, the Russian Ministry of Defense reported allegedly shooting down or intercepting 93 drones. 7 of them were over the Nizhny Novgorod region. Breaking news: Moscow is freezing. The Russian capital is without electricity and heat. The Kremlin helplessly watches as its empire falls apart at the seams. The streets are plunged into darkness, and panic and outrage are growing by the hour.
Dear residents, an emergency headquarters is being set up to deal with the aftermath of the attack. All emergency services are on site. At the moment, we are working on restoring the heating. Please remain calm. That is the most important thing.
It has become known that the Shatura thermal power plant located in the Moscow region has ceased to exist.
The power plant is on fire. The power plant was blown up. Just now, 2 drones. The power plant is gone. Something flew by. Look.
There, black smoke is rising. Yes, it's black. I hear shelling. What's that? It's me.
Just relax. Damn, that was close. I am really sorry, but absolutely not. I just cannot agree.
This is one of the oldest power plants in Russia. Apparently it wasn't age that took it down, but fierce Ukrainian drones.
Most likely, the power output node of the power plant is on fire. The power output node is an infrastructure complex through which the power plant transmits the generated electricity to the unified energy system.
Russian air defense was clearly powerless. Drones get through and the enemy remains defenseless against precise strikes.
Let us count together, step by step. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Take a moment to notice each number as we say them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Are those bullets flying or electrons?
Meanwhile, a wave of problems has also hit Russian aviation. For the first time, a Russian Mi-8 helicopter was shot down in the air by a Special Operations Forces deep strike drone. Our forces did it. Rostov region is burning with the fire of revenge.
This mission has left the enemy with a lot of questions to which only the Mi-8 crew members know the answers, but they won't tell.
Moreover, it has become known that it might not have been a transport Mi-8 that was shot down, but rather an attack Mi-28. Nevertheless, the Russian army still cannot come to terms with the loss of part of its aircraft fleet. The political arena has erupted urgently, a dramatic turn of events. Trump's peace plan has stirred up a cauldron within the United States. Ukraine is making decisive statements. Zelenskyy has succeeded. The peace formula is being rewritten in Kyiv's favor. Moscow is starting to get nervous. All attempts to come out on top are shattered in an instant. Putin is losing his footing. What can we expect as soon as tomorrow? Will Washington finally take Ukraine's side, turning its back on Moscow? We'll talk about this in just a moment.
The negotiations in Geneva regarding Trump's peace plan are of critical importance. Representatives from the U.S., Ukraine, and national security advisors from France, the United Kingdom, and Germany participated in these talks, discussing the American draft plan to end the war in Ukraine.
Ukraine approaches this process with a clear understanding of its own interests. This is another stage in the ongoing dialogue of recent days, and it is primarily aimed at coordinating a shared vision for the next steps.
Trump's aides also attended the meeting, including U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff and Secretary of State Marco Rubio.
The meeting was the most productive and substantive of all those held so far. In
the Ukrainian president's office, they are ready to work as quickly as possible to achieve real peace.
Ukraine never wanted this war and will do everything to end it with an honorable peace. Ukraine will never be an obstacle to peace, and representatives of the Ukrainian state will defend the just interests of the Ukrainian people and the foundations of European security. We are grateful for the willingness of our European partners to help.
Ukraine's allies seek to rewrite Trump's proposal, which they believe would benefit Russia. They disagree with at least 4 points. We
firmly adhere to the principle that borders must not be changed by force. We are also concerned about the proposed restrictions on the armed forces of Ukraine, which would leave Ukraine vulnerable to future attacks. This is tantamount to military castration and would leave Ukraine perpetually vulnerable to a third invasion.
The leaders of European countries agreed to take the project as a basis and expressed their readiness to work on it together.
We have made very good progress and we are moving towards a just and lasting peace. Ukrainians deserve more from the world than anyone else on this planet. We believe that our great friend, the United States, especially President Trump and his team, will endorse this peace.
Keith Kellogg is confident that Trump will be able to end this war.
The foundation of the agreement has already been established. We are almost on the home stretch to ending the war. There are things in the plan that should be spelled out and explained more clearly. There will also be security guarantees. The main guarantor of these should be the United States in order to avoid the mistakes of the Budapest Memorandum and the Minsk agreements.
Currently, the media are reporting that Trump has appointed Driscoll, a friend and former classmate of Vice President J.D. Vance, as his new special representative. It is quite possible that he will be working in parallel with Keith Kellogg, who may leave the administration in January. Washington continues to insist on advancing its 28-point plan. According to this plan, Ukraine is expected to make territorial concessions to Russia and reduce its army. The U.S. and Europe commit to funding the reconstruction of Ukraine. Sanctions on the Russian Federation are gradually lifted, and Moscow and Washington sign an agreement on long-term economic cooperation.
This is not our recommendation, this is our peace plan. This is the proposal that was received. And as intermediaries, we agreed to share it. And we did not make it public. It leaked. It was not made public by our members or our representatives.
Donald Trump believes that Ukraine may decide to sign the peace plan on November 27th before Thanksgiving. But during a meeting with journalists, Trump noted that his peace plan is far from a final proposal.
No, it is far from final. We would like to achieve peace. This should have happened a long time ago. The war between Ukraine and Russia should never have happened. If I had been president, this would never have happened. We are trying to end it. One way or another, we have to end it.
On Friday, Zelenskyy addressed the Ukrainian people, stating that today Ukraine faces a difficult choice and risks either losing its dignity or its key partner.
This is one of the most difficult moments in our history. Right now, the pressure on Ukraine is one of the hardest. At this moment, Ukraine may face a very difficult choice. Either the loss of dignity or the risk of losing a key partner.
Sources close to the Kremlin say that the provisions of this document should be seen more as a basis for a future agreement rather than as an agreement that Putin will officially sign.
If Kyiv does not want to discuss, if they reject President Trump's proposal and refuse this, then both they and the European warmongers must understand that the events that took place in Kupiansk will inevitably be repeated in other key areas of the front. Maybe not as quickly as we would like, but inevitably this will happen again. And overall, we are fine with that.
Moscow does not like the proposed security guarantees for Ukraine, the size of the army, and the use of frozen Russian assets to support Ukraine. We
have this text. We received it through the existing channel of communication with the American administration. I believe that it can also serve as the basis for a final peace settlement.
The Kremlin is creating informational conditions to back out of the agreement. After all, Russia is not interested in making territorial concessions, according to the American Institute for the Study of War.
A Russian victory is not inevitable. Ukraine and the West can exploit several key Russian weaknesses to force the Kremlin to negotiate and make real concessions.
Meanwhile, the Kremlin is facing growing problems with material and human resources, which continue to complicate Moscow's ability to sustain the war and the extent of its prolongation. That is why the Russian Federation is very interested in forcing Ukraine to surrender critically important territories that the Russian military is unlikely to be able to capture. That is why Gerasimov, when reporting the situation at the front to Putin, continues to exaggerate their successes. And Putin plays along in order to force Ukraine and the West to accept Russia's demands in negotiations.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine today. Join us now.
At this very moment, the Russian army is drowning in its own web of lies. Kupiansk has dealt a ruthless blow to Gerasimov and Putin. The armed forces of Ukraine have made every possible effort. You have to see this, Pokrovsk is keeping up as well. Kremlin soldiers are advancing in columns, but they are met with a worthy resistance. Ukrainian defenders are in control of the situation. Enemy clearing operations are ongoing in Minorad. The front is boiling with battles. Don't miss the detailed report on the situation across all these front lines coming up next.
The chief of the general staff of the occupying forces, Gerasimov, reported to Putin about the capture of the city of Kupiansk in the Kharkiv region, according to the Kremlin general. Similarly, the Russian West Group is fighting for Kucherivka, Kurilivka, and Kupiansk-Vuzlovi, actively advancing toward Krasny Lyman.
The units of the Zapad Group have chosen the city of Kupiansk and continue to destroy the Ukrainian military formations encircled on the left bank of the Oskil River. The offensive is successfully developing in the Rubtsovsk and Krasny Lyman directions.
The lies about the capture of Kupiansk are very similar to the so-called seizure of Pokrovsk. A year ago, Russian generals were already talking about capturing this city in Donetsk region. 3 weeks ago, Putin himself invited journalists to come there. And to this day, Pokrovsk, like Kupiansk, remains under the control of the Ukrainian armed forces.
Gerasimov himself reports that Kupiansk has been taken. But in reality, Kupiansk has not been taken, and this is stated not only by historians in Ukraine, but also, for example, by the Institute for the Study of War, which refuted General Gerasimov's claim. Well, there's nothing new about this. It's typical lying by Russian generals.
The information about the capture of the city was also denied by the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine.
The leadership of the terrorist state continues to produce cheap informational provocations. In particular, the chief of the Russian General Staff, Gerasimov, reported to the Russian ruler about the alleged complete capture of the settlements of Kupiansk in the Kharkiv region and Yampil in the Donetsk region. The General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine reports that Kupiansk is under the control of the Ukrainian Defense Forces both in the city and on its outskirts. Counter-sabotage measures and special operations to search for and eliminate enemy sabotage and reconnaissance groups that have infiltrated the city are ongoing.
The 7th Air Assault Corps of the Armed Forces of Ukraine notes that the enemy is being forced to deploy reserves because its forces are becoming exhausted.
The defense forces are holding designated lines in the northern part of Pokrovsk. We also control positions south of the railway, which are important for further deoccupation. The enemy is trying to cross the railway to expand the area of occupation in the city, but our troops are blocking these attempts. The enemy's forces in Pokrovsk are being worn down. As a result, the enemy is forced to replenish its personnel losses. The Russian command has already deployed the operational reserve of the Central Military District, the 76th Air Assault Division of the Russian Federation, in our area of responsibility.
Unfortunately, although these reserves are of low quality, they outnumber the capabilities of the armed forces of Ukraine by several times.
It's no secret that throughout the entire war, the enemy has had a significant advantage in manpower. If in 2022 this wasn't as noticeable, since at that time the advantage was about 1.5 times, but then it grew to 2 times. Now the enemy outnumbers us in manpower, at least on our section of the front according to various estimates, by 3.5 to 4 times. Dmitro Filatov, commander of the 1st Separate Assault Battalion named after Dmitro Kotsiubailo. In
Myrnohrad, the armed forces of Ukraine also have the situation fully under control. The clearing of enemy infantry is coming to an end. Out of desperation, the Russians are striking Myrnohrad with FAB bombs, but this does not yield the desired result. Despite suffering enormous losses, the Russians are trying to infiltrate in small groups not only into Myrnohrad and Pokrovsk, but also into the outskirts of these cities. But these attempts are being harshly suppressed. Unfortunately, the Russian army has made minor advances in the Zaporizhia and Dnipropetrovsk directions due to their significant advantage in infantry, which is strongly felt. At the moment, the Ukrainian armed forces simply do not have enough personnel on the front lines.
The Kremlin is coming apart at the seams. Putin is desperate, trying to maintain control, but his army has been left without critically important resources. Factories are operating intermittently, supplies are being cut off, old Soviet machines are becoming as valuable as gold, and modern equipment is wearing out quickly. The war is draining Russia's strength every day, and each day without reinforcements makes the Kremlin regime weaker. How much longer can his empire hold out? The answer is close at hand. The Russian military-industrial complex is on the brink, and Putin's arms exports are falling.
There are unofficial indicators and no one disputes them.
The main reasons are budget constraints and sanctions, which complicate the economic situation in Russia.
The so-called special military operation has shown the world the weakness of both the Russian army and its weapons.
People working in the arms market are wary. They are asking themselves, is the weaponry produced by Russia really that effective? Because listen, if you're supposed to accomplish something in 2 months, but you still can't do it after 4 years, then maybe your weaponry isn't that good after all. And accordingly, many buyers and potential purchasers of Russian weaponry are starting to wonder if Russia can't win this war quickly, then maybe their weapons may not be as effective as expected. And if the weapons aren't that good, then maybe they're not worth buying.
Before Russia's invasion of Ukraine, the export of Russian arms brought about $14 billion in foreign currency revenue to the economy annually. Now, compared to 2022, it has been cut in half. If in 2018 to 2022, Russian supplies went to 47 countries, then in 2024 to 33.
The Russian Federation held one of the leading positions in the global arms market. It should be noted that the Russian Federation's main defense contracts are with India and, accordingly, countries of the Near and Middle East. That is, the most solvent ones. According
to data from an American publication, last year Russia exported arms to various countries.
Only 1 billion. S-400. Moreover, the contract was signed to last until 2023. And since 2023, the Russian Federation has already extended this agreement twice. They explain this by saying that the Russian Federation does not have enough surface-to-air missile systems to not only meet the needs of the Indian side, but also accordingly to meet the needs of their own armies.
For the Russian military-industrial complex, foreign contracts have always been more attractive than domestic ones. Thanks to them, the Russian defense industry grew wealthier, which allowed it to simultaneously supply the Russian army as well. However, the situation has changed now.
Russia both profited here and at the same time made others dependent on its maintenance services. We understand that, especially when it comes to the defense industry. It's important not just to sell a helicopter, a plane, a tank, or whatever it may be. The main thing is the maintenance, because technical service is essential, and that's exactly where this dependency emerged. Now, when they refuse to buy a bunch of these goods, they will also refuse the maintenance because you are not providing technical service for equipment from other countries. And if selling is a one-time deal, but maintenance is a deal for many years to come, and this is where Russia is also losing out.
Russia's military industry has focused not on exporting its products, but on fulfilling domestic orders for the Russian army, which have become a priority amid the full-scale war in Ukraine. But even here, problems have arisen.
The replenishment of the Russian treasury has sharply decreased, and accordingly, the capacity of the Russian military-industrial complex has also diminished. Moreover, Azov once again emphasizes, I'm quoting the primary source here, that the government needs to provide long-term, cheap money to support technological development. But at the same time, he also notes that the Russian political leadership currently does not have such opportunities.
Right now, the Russian Federation's military-industrial complex is engaged in restoring old Soviet models of heavy armored vehicles, the expert emphasizes.
Western technologies form the backbone of the Russian military-industrial complex. This includes equipment, electronics, and essentially the main components used in the production of both weapons and armored vehicles. And at the moment, currently lacking the ability to purchase or acquire modern technological equipment and essential components, Russia's Rostec is forced to admit that its main activity is essentially focused on repairing old Soviet-era drone technology.
The losses of Russian military equipment during the war in Ukraine are estimated at tens of thousands of units, including tanks, armored vehicles, artillery, aircraft, and helicopters. The actual losses are likely even higher. We continue with the next part of our episode right now. Stay tuned for the latest events so we can be the first to tell you about them. Don't forget to subscribe. See you soon.